Good morning. Welcome to the Language and Inclusion Summit with the theme, Language and Inclusion, Promoting Diversity, Inclusivity, and Equity for All Filipino Learners. This event is made possible by the Department of Education through the Curriculum and Teaching Strand in partnership with USAID ABC+. We're also live via DepEd Philippines Facebook page. Foremost, we acknowledge the presence of our Vice President and DepEd Secretary, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte. Also with us are Honorable Senator Lorna Regina Lauren B. Legarda and Honorable Senator Sherwin T. Gatchalian and the Deputy Mission Director of the United States Agency for International Development, Attorney Rebecca Eubanks. Let us give them a big round of applause. One of the highlights of this summit is the Language and Inclusion Resources exhibit, where we will all witness the showcase of teaching and learning materials which were developed and are being used in schools in support of the implementation of DepEd's language and inclusion programs. The ribbon-cutting ceremony, which will be followed by the gallery walk, signals the formal opening of the exhibit. To lead us all in unveiling the Language and Inclusion Resources exhibit, let us welcome the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines and Secretary of the Department of Education, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte. She will be assisted by Honorable Senator Lauren Legarda, Honorable Senator Win Gatchalian, Undersecretary Gina O. Gonong, along with the Deputy Mission Director of the United States Agency for International Development, Attorney Rebecca Eubanks. Without further ado, let's officially open the Language and Inclusion Resources exhibit. May I invite the Vice President and Secretary Duterte to do the honors of cutting the ribbon. And together, on the count of 3, let's make this event a meaningful one. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations! The Language and Inclusion Resources exhibit is now officially open. For the other participants, we encourage you to view the gallery during the break and engage with the displays, delve into the rich narratives they encapsulate, and gain deeper understanding of the transformative impact language can have on our learners. proceed back to the plenary hall for our opening program and Language and Inclusion Summit proper. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines and DepEd Secretary, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte, together with Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Loren Legarda, and Senator Win Gatchalian, together with other guests. Together with Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Loren Legarda, and Senator Win Gatchalian, together with our other guests. Let's all rise for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem and for the doxology to be interpreted by Salvacion C. Olenares and Dorothy Estarol through Filipino Sign Language.
Sa manlulupig, ikapasisi, sa nagpapalala. Maya kami, ay makiwada-wada kita.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wal barakatuh. Salam pa mga kiaulungan sing Tuhan. Pianaugan niya Nabi Iban Quran. Kasilasan niya sa plag pakatilingkal alam. Maglasa kita niyo ban umanan. Umbo Tuhan, tunggal nu sa sangdolan kami. Buwanin kami rijiki maglabi-labi. Law sangom rahmat nu subay pagpinudji. Hangkan kita bi subay magkasih-kasih.
Palantang mamapagpululang Panginoon ka sinilagan Panginoon ka apakatang Panginoon ka masakpan Panginoon ka suwagda Panginoon ka amoy pangirayon kami to'y watang walay sito palantang mamapagpululang
Piling namin ang pagpapalagana ng kaalaman sa bawat nilalang.
Panginoon, dinggin mo kami.
O Diyos ng awa, bigyan mo kami ng kakayahan sa pagtataguyod ng pakikipag-ugnayan sa bawat isa.
Panginoon, dinggin mo kami.
O Diyos na mapagkalinga, mangyaring ikaw ang pagpapaunlad ng kalikasan ng tao sa mundo.
Panginoon, dinggin mo kami.
O Diyos na pag-ibig, tulungan mo ang aming bansa ng pagkakaisa at pagkakaunawaan sa gitna ng pagkakaiba-iba.
Panginoon,
You may now be seated. Thank you. To present the participants and provide us with an overview of the summit's purpose, may we invite on stage the Director 4 of the Bureau of Learning Delivery, Dr. Laila P. Ariola. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Diyos na uma, di ka mo ngamin, mango, kan ikayo ngagmin, na imbaga bigat yung amin po, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Today, we are privileged to have an exceptional group of participants with us, hailing from diverse backgrounds and sectors. Among us are government leaders, policymakers, educators, researchers, advocates, community leaders, and representatives from the government and non-government organizations. Each participant here brings invaluable expertise, experiences, and insights that will contribute to the richness and depth of our discussions. It is therefore my pleasure to introduce to you, to each other, our esteemed participants of Language and Inclusion Summit. As the name of the organization, School University of Region, is flashed on screen, please give a big round of applause. activity, a grand salute goes for everyone who are here with us today. Thank you for being one with us in this learning journey that will shed light on the critical role that language plays in fostering respect for diversity, inclusivity, and equity for our Filipino learners. We gather here with a common purpose: to explore the transformative power of language and inclusion inclusion in basic education. We are honored to have a diverse group of participants who have come together from various backgrounds and sectors, each bringing their unique perspectives and expertise to enrich our discussions. The Language and Inclusion Summit has been designed with 4 key purposes in mind. Our first purpose is to present empirical data that underscores the vital importance of language and inclusion in education. Through research and evidence-based findings, we aim to showcase how language and inclusion in basic education can serve as catalysts for creating equitable and inclusive learning environments. Our second purpose is to foster a deeper understanding of the first language-based multilingual education and the pivotal role of languages in promoting inclusion and literacy. We will delve into the benefits of the mother tongue-based multilingual education, special needs education, madrasa education, indigenous peoples education, and alternative learning system. By exploring these initiatives and practices, we can learn how languages can be harnessed to empower our learners regardless of their diverse background, bridge cultural divides, and enhance learning outcomes. Our third purpose is to showcase exemplary initiatives and good practices in the implementation of language and inclusion policies and programs. We will highlight successful endeavors in MTB, MLE, SNED, Madrasa Education, IPED, and ALS. These initiatives serve as beacon of inspiration, demonstrating how language and inclusive practices can be integrated into educational frameworks. Lastly, our fourth purpose is to gather commitment from stakeholders to support the implementation of language and inclusion programs and policies. We believe that real change occurs through collective action and collaboration. By bringing together policymakers, educators, researchers, advocates, and stakeholders from various sectors, we hope to create a platform where commitments can be made, partnerships can be forged, and actionable steps can be taken towards strengthening inclusive education. Once again, we extend our warmest welcome and gratitude to each participant joining us in this Language and Inclusion Summit. Let us seize this opportunity to learn, share, and inspire one another as we work towards creating learning environments where every learner is respected and valued. And we will do this all together para sa isang matatag na edukasyon, para sa mga mag-aaral na ating minamahal. Diyos tiagnina, kada kayo amin apo, mabalo, mabalat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Director Ariola, for introducing our participants and for walking us through on the purpose of this event. Now, we will hear a special message of support from the Deputy Mission Director of USAID. So please join me in welcoming Attorney Rebecca Eubanks.
Her Excellency, Vice President of the Philippines and Secretary of the Department of Education, Sara Duterte, Honorable Lauren Lagarda, Senator, Republic of the Philippines, Honorable Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator, Republic of the Philippines, Yusek Gina Ganong, DepEd Undersecretary for Curriculum and Teaching, Yusek Michael Poa, DepEd Undersecretary and Chief of Staff, Bar Ministry of Basic Education, of Basic, Higher, and Technical Education officials who are present with us here today. Good morning. Distinguished guests, friends, and partners, it is with great pleasure that I join you today to reaffirm our commitment to supporting the Department of Education in its pursuit of quality and inclusive education for all Filipinos. I bring you the greetings of the U.S. Ambassador Mary Kay Loss Carlson. The U.S. government recognizes the remarkable ties of friendship, community, and shared sacrifice that serve as the foundation of the U.S.-Philippine alliance. This has been expressed and shared both by U.S. President Joseph Biden and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos during President Marcos's recent visit to Washington, D.C. The Philippines has been a longtime ally of the United States and is a key partner in promoting sustainable and inclusive development. The U.S. government, through the United States Agency for International Development, works with partners to improve the quality of both basic and higher education across the country. USAID has invested significantly in new education in the Philippines to improve early grade reading skills, strengthen education governance at the community level, help universities align research and curricula with industry demands, and strengthen a science, technology, and innovation ecosystem. We provide education, economic, and leadership opportunities to vulnerable out-of-school youth across the country. These are just some of our interventions in support of the Department of Education's goal of providing a quality and inclusive education for all Filipino learners. We appreciated the opportunity to support the Language and Inclusion Pre-Summit 2 weeks ago, which helped pave the way for today's significant event. Collaborative discussions, recommendations, and decisions are crucial as we think about education policies, education actions, and assessments. Input from educators, education stakeholders, and partners are essential to come up with sustainable and inclusive actions in the interest of all Filipino learners. Together, we can make a positive impact on the basic education system in the Philippines by providing inclusive learning opportunities for all students. USAID is actively supporting the inclusive education efforts of DepEd. One of our education projects, the ABC Plus, Advancing Basic Education in the Philippines activity, supports efforts to reach children who may be marginalized by the language used for learning to ensure access to quality learning materials. The project includes early grade reading materials containing stories with diverse characters and integrating gender equality and social inclusion principles in classroom instruction. USAID is also working with DepEd to develop reading materials in mother tongue languages, which is vital in supporting a language diversity of learners. I would also like to highlight our disability inclusive education project called Gabay, which tripled the enrollment of deaf and blind learners in project sites and strengthened the capacity of schools and teachers to teach children with disabilities. USAID worked with DepEd to strengthen a Filipino Sign Language curriculum. We developed a Filipino Sign Language dictionary and trained teachers and parents in basic sign language so students can learn both in school and at home. We thank DepEd for widening the path to inclusive education, and we look forward to continuing this journey as you implement Republic Act 11650, the law that mandates policies and services, most of all education, for all children with disabilities. I am confident that every individual here has already made valuable contributions towards the goal of ensuring inclusive education for all learners. However, we must strive to do more to ensure that every child has equal access to quality education and the opportunity to learn and thrive in a safe and supportive environment. I urge all of our partners to support DepEd in this critical endeavor, for it is only through our collective efforts that we can ensure that all learners in the country have access to quality and inclusive education. As your enduring friend, partner, and ally, the United States is proud to work with you to make a difference and create a brighter future for the Philippines. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Attorney Eubanks, for your presence and message of support. To introduce our keynote speaker, please help me welcome the DepEd Undersecretary for Curriculum and Teaching, Dr. Gina O. Gonong. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines and Secretary of the Department of Education, Sara Z. Duterte.
Thank you. You may take your seats. The Honorable Senator Lauren Legarda, the Honorable Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum. Madayaw ug maayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. First, the Department of Education stands with the most profound optimism that we will be able to surmount the challenges that are besetting Philippine basic education. Our confidence is coming from the support of all members of the Senate and Congress to the reforms that we have laid down to resolve learning difficulties, and are also inspired by our partners from the sectors of the academe, research centers, non-government organizations, private groups, international agencies, private individuals, and local government units. Some of them are here today. We are joined by some friends from Congress and Senate and other partners, and we wholeheartedly express our gratitude to all of you. Daghang salamat sa inyong pagtambong sa summit. This Language and Inclusion Summit underscores our collective task of mainstreaming inclusive education. This brings us to the reality of the complexity of the basic education landscape. We are not only here to ensure the efficient, effective, equitable, and timely delivery of basic education to Filipino children. We are also here to ensure that education is inclusive, that it embraces everyone, that it ends the culture of othering. I believe that basic education only becomes truly meaningful and effective if we can put inclusivity at the center of what we do. If we only make inclusivity the heart and soul of our reforms and efforts to improve basic education. This means that our matatag agenda does not forget, discriminate against, or disregard indigenous peoples, or our Lumad brothers and sisters, our Muslim communities, our people with disabilities. Their emancipation from conditions that have made their lives difficult compared to other sectors will only happen through our conscious effort to pull them right into the center of what we do as a community of education stakeholders. Our programs should lift them up, take them away from the sidelines, bail them out from their conditions of hardships, poverty, and ultimately help them improve their lives. We shall end this culture of othering that is injurious to people outside of our social status, or those who belong to the minority or disadvantaged sectors. It is encouraging to see you with us today to address this matter. This is a testament to your dedication and willingness to work with the Department of Education and realize our dreams and aspirations for Filipino learners. We reaffirm our commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, the UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in Education, and the Education 2030 Framework for Action, which emphasizes inclusion and equity as the foundation for quality education. We hope to see our IP or LUMAD learners, Muslim learners, and PWD learners experience the same learning experience we provide other learners. We want them to be part of the school community. When harnessed properly, they bring unique insights, ideas, and perspectives to nation-building programs. We are grateful for the signing into law of Republic Act 11-650 in 2022, also known as Instituting a Policy of Inclusion and Service for Learners with Disabilities in Support of Inclusive Education Act. The passage of the said law is indeed a milestone for inclusive education in our country. In support of RA 11650 and even years ahead of said legislation, the Department of Education issued and implemented inclusive policies, namely DepEd Order number 23, series of 2022, or the Child Find Policy for Learners with Disabilities towards Inclusive Education. DepEd number 45, series of 2021, which tackles the policy guidelines on the selection of and minimum requirements for the conversion of certain schools with SPED centers into prototype inclusive learning resource centers. And DepEd number 29, series of 2018, or the multi-factored assessment tools for learners identified with red flags. As a result, 32 SPED centers have been converted into inclusive learning resource centers, or ILRCs. However, we are not stopping here, but because truthfully, this is not enough. DepEd aims to convert and construct more ILRCs and make them functional to provide appropriate intervention to all learners. To operationalize ILRCs, we need a multidisciplinary team to manage and provide appropriate services to learners with disabilities. DepEd has presented to the Department of Budget and Management the need for additional ILRCs, personnel to fully operate these ILRCs. On the other hand, the alternative learning system, which was institutionalized through Republic Act 11510, improves access to basic education in the underserved and disadvantaged sectors. Through ALS, DepEd can provide opportunities for out-of-school youth and adult learners to develop basic and functional literacy and to access equivalent pathways to complete basic education. As a second chance program, it empowers out-of-school youth and adult learners to continue learning in a manner, time, and place suited to their preferences and circumstances. To date, 695,894 learners have been enrolled in the Basic Literacy Program and Accreditation and Equivalency in elementary and junior high school level, while 24,524 ALS senior high school students have been enrolled in different tracks in selected public schools. The Bureau of Alternative Education continues to produce ALS teaching and learning resources, conducts capacity building activities for ALS implementers, and establishes ALS community learning centers. In the case of our Madrasa education program, we prioritize the integration of Arabic language and Islamic values education, or the ALIVE program, in public madaris or schools, and K-12 basic education curriculum in private madaris. Madrasa emphasizes the study of Arabic, which is the language of the Quran, and a critical component of Islamic studies. Through the study of Arabic, learners develop their language and literacy skills and gain a deeper understanding of the Islamic faith and its teachings. Arabic language and Islamic values education classes emphasize the importance of reading and writing, particularly in Arabic, in which learners learn to read and write Arabic scripts, thus improving their language, literacy, and numeracy skills. The Madrasa education program is expected to provide equitable access and opportunities, as well as appropriate high-quality basic education programs and services for Muslim learners. The Department of Education continues to provide culture-based education across all grade levels in partnership with local IP communities, ensuring that national standards and cultural knowledge are learned together for the holistic development of indigenous peoples' learners. To ensure the delivery of quality education to indigenous peoples, DepEd created the Indigenous Peoples Education Office in 2011. To date, the IP education program, or IPED, has been implemented in 16 regions and 121 divisions. Currently, over 75 IP languages are being used as the medium of teaching and learning as appropriate, contributing to increase in IP learners who are now openly embracing their IP identity, as reflected in the DepEd's enrollment data. Language and inclusion are closely intertwined. Using a language that a learner can speak or understand promotes a sense of belonging and pride in the latter's culture, which we believe is critical in ensuring learning motivation and promoting engagement. An inclusive education system recognizes and values the diversity of learners, backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, and languages. Our learners are given access to education in their first language, which they can easily understand. And by the way, when I speak of languages, I also refer to the Filipino Sign Language. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres acknowledges that children and youth face prejudice on a variety of grounds, including the neglect of their first language. Learners cannot learn what they do not understand. We strongly believe in and promote this in the Department of Education. To avoid further marginalizing learners who are already weak and disadvantaged, educators must make multilingual education a key component of strategic intervention. Marami na tayong nagawa sa larangan ng inclusive education, subalit malayo pa po ang ating tatahakin. Patuloy nating palalawigin ang ating mga nasimulan sa iba't ibang inclusive education programs. We have made significant strides to strengthen our inclusion programs, and we vow to continue these efforts until everything is in place for our learners to flourish, so that they have equal opportunities to learn, grow, and be in a positive and non-threatening environment. I just want to share my experience in law school. Naalala ko, I was born and raised in Davao. I was only sent to Manila to study medicine, and then thereafter I transferred to law school. Naaalala ko lang, doon sa aming block during our first year, lahat ng mga Bisaya magkakasama sa likod. We did not feel that we were excluded. Wala namang mga ganon. Pero somehow, lahat ng mga tiga-probinsya and my friends doon sa likod were all galing sa probinsya. One was Chabacano, isa was Ilonggo from Panay Island. Ako, we were, I think, tatlong Bisaya, and then tatlong tiga Bicol, and then we had one from Laguna. We did not feel that we were excluded, but somehow that is the culture inside classrooms and schools. Laging, because you are from the province or galing ka ng Mindanao, kayo-kayo lang yung magkakasama at nagiging magkaibigan. When I became president of our sorority, I made sure to recruit Muslim sisters and law students. It was during my time as sorority president where we had the most number of Muslim sisters in our sorority, because somehow they were not sought out to be recruited before I came in as lady president of the sorority. I think it's the culture. It's not anyone's fault, but I think we need to do something about it so that our future generation will understand the importance of respect and inclusion. With the matatag agenda, Bansang Makabata and Batang Makabansa in one place, I trust that we will only drumbeat for synchronized efforts of DepEd and external stakeholders to break the barriers in education, but more importantly, put a premium on supporting our teachers so that inclusive education can happen in every classroom. I humbly ask our teachers to maintain their fervor in teaching. May you serve our learners in disadvantaged situations with compassion. We reaffirm our matatag commitments dedicated to language and inclusion. To improve English proficiency while recognizing linguistic diversity, we will work towards the goal of English language proficiency within the context of a multilingual nation. To review the implementation of the mother tongue-based multilingual education policy guided by the principle that, among others, learners learn when taught in a language that they understand. To continue the establishment of inclusive learning resource centers. To provide assistive mechanisms such as audio-assisted technology Braille, and large print test materials to disabled students. We will introduce digital textbooks for certain core subjects in senior high school. To work with regional offices and our partners to facilitate the development of learning resources for special needs learners, specifically visually and hearing impaired learners. To ensure that all school-age children, youth, and adults in disadvantaged situations participate in inclusive basic learning opportunities and receive appropriate quality education. To undertake initiatives to provide schooling to many more children and youth in situations of disadvantage, regardless of gender, abilities, psycho-emotional and physical conditions, cultural and religious identity, and socioeconomic standing. To strengthen our inclusive education programs, including the alternative learning system, last mile schools, and programs for IP learners, learners with disabilities, and Muslim learners. We will endeavor for all learners, regardless of their backgrounds, to afford quality learning opportunities and services. We will continue to live in our faith that education is a great enabler rather than a great divider. Any noble undertaking, however, cannot succeed if performed single-handedly. Therefore, I appeal to the collective effort of stakeholders to have our sights set on an active call on inclusion. To all of us, let us never dim the lights of inclusive education. Before I end, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the curriculum and teaching strands of the Department of Education for making this summit of language and inclusion possible. To the Bureau of Learning Delivery, Bureau of Curriculum Development, Bureau of Learning Resources, Bureau of Education Assessment, Bureau of Alternative Education, and Literacy Coordinating Council, thank you for your tireless efforts. Your hard work and dedication that are recognized, and I am deeply grateful for all that you have been doing, including our regional directors. My heartfelt gratitude also goes to all our educators, policymakers, advocates, and stakeholders who have joined us today to participate in this crucial conversation about language and inclusion. Your presence and contributions to this summit demonstrate your commitment to fostering a more equitable and just society in which every learner has the opportunity to thrive and succeed. Mananatili tayong matatag tungo sa pagtamo ng ating mga mithiin. Marami pa tayong magagawa dahil patuloy tayong buong dangal nakikilos para sa kabataang Pilipino upang maitaguyod ang isang bansang makabata at mga batang makabansa. Ang lahat para sa Diyos, sa bayan, at sa pamilyang Pilipino. Syukran.
Our Vice President and Secretary, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte. Thank you so much for your powerful, inspiring message, for your strong leadership, improve the quality of education. Restore human rights, our honorable rights, together with other
Higit 1,000 isla. Higit 100 wika. Mga yaman at pamana ng ating bansa sa higit 28 milyong mag-aaral. Ang mga wika sa pamayanan na nagbibigkis ng mga ugnayan ay may tahanan sa ating mga paaralan.
Pat, abi-abi, mga anak.
Siya, permi agayod kabaya-baya kung tag-aha ko eh.
Sa ato ang mga uma, sa ato ang maul.
Mula sa kinagis ng wika, tungo sa pagbasa at pagsulat.
Nga ako ang labing taas sa among managbarkada.
Sa pakikipag-ugnay, pakikilahok, pagsusuri at paglikha. Maging sa pagharap sa mga hamon ng mas malawak na mundo. Nananatiling matatag na pundasyon at gabay ang wikang nais sa puso. Sa pagtataguyod ng reforma at pagbabago, naglipa na ang mga balakid at hamon sa paglago.
Sa gitna ng hamon sa edukasyon, tayo po ay magiging matatag. We will strengthen our inclusive education programs, including the alternative learning system, Last Night Schools, and programs for IP learners and learners with disabilities. We will endeavor that all learners, no matter what their backgrounds are, will be afforded quality learning opportunities and services. We will work towards the goal of English language proficiency within the context of a multilingual nation. We will review the implementation of the mother tongue-based multilingual education policy guided by the basic principle that, among others, learners learn when taught in a language that they understand. Together, we will rally for every Filipino child.
Para sa isang matatag na bayan.
Para sa ating mahal na Pilipinas.
To reinforce our commitment to language and inclusion, may we call on stage Miss Maria Lori Victor for the details of the ceremony on fostering commitment.
Sa yugtong ito, ating pagbibigkisin ang ating mga adhikain, pangarap at mithiin para sa isang inklusibong edukasyon na nakaugat sa iba't ibang wika ng ating bansa. In a while, parang dramatic entrance na po ito. Our Vice President and Department of Education Secretary, Sara Z. Duterte, together with our esteemed guests, will lead us in setting our commitments to language and inclusion for our youth and our nation by writing their statement of commitment. Before we proceed, united in spirit, let us request that we and our acts of commitment be blessed. May we please request our language representatives to please come forward, and may we request everyone to please stand.
O aposios me abadag yaman me ni manjain kaulnong ni pantitinodong isyawat mi bindisyon mo jamatong pal ikabulngo ni pan miniyay Japan kaawatan siyay.
Kay cumanem babang kawi babanwanaw gitawan na aduna alaw dakula ya pianguliman kalati agadi au pakanyugiakan mugitawan na toon yang uliman adun kay cumanem ya kanami katanem au indeganan di sabaka bunbunan
Apo na amin dipindi yahata pami cicipon nan hapagay diamun mangid ya biaya ya tungkol ha edukasyon ay pakakaw mo boy diamun maganday resulta. Salamat.
Oh, lindaan pulo-pulo darabaya mo barakat di mo de persanya mi piyo bagi
Ikakarumi o katawan so pamindisyon mo at amin iran kimoy mi makalanor at pangkaabigan na ugugaw.
Idaw-dawat mi apo na marswami nga agnanayon nga bendisyonan na kami tapno balay giti amin nga ubing mikat nga gunod mi.
Ginong mayupaya palugot at niglalam keng keganagana. Anya duan miya ingke kang presensya bendisyon keng pamitipon na ini. Giyan maying bawat metong kay kami keng ikatugumpena ning Language and Inclusion Summit. Patuloy mo lang biyayan gaya nga manong siswan. Nung mawala la reni, minupay kami. Iti kaya kaming dalangin o ginuming mayupaya.
Ang pagpasalamat kay kumuapo na malyari. Tahabay ti ay kalwang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Hikay mambing kapulalagan. Habawat niya kunawon, maming kalinawan, habawat pamiilgo. Apo na malyari, hikay maminim bawat maganday kanakuman, para ikaganda ning kaganawan. Salamat.
Kibting kadaw-kadawan, suga-suga badang-bang, pamudo to kahibayo, say bata nakatago, o magbabadya, pasalamatan ka tumadogi. Sumigmalampuston ko ito kahimunan, to inikagihan daw pagpalakip.
O Diyos mi nga marayarayaw, mabalo-balo kami sa ngaw nga aggaw. Ibendisyon mo, yawa mo ni kami, pakoma mo ikatagarulyam mi. Yaw idasal mi, tangagad da Ama, Anak, at ng Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Ginoo, bendisyonan mo amang pangamuyo ig commitment. Nga ang programang Language ig Inclusion ay magtaw ikalidad ig pagkakapantay-pantay ang pagtrato sa tanan nga mga nagaradal sa amang nasyon. Amen.
Bendisyon ni kini nga ang paggamit sa lain-laing pinulungan alang sa kahiusahan o kalampusan sa tanan.
Ojalá ay bendisi usted kanamon, hindi lang este día, para na otro mga ocasiones, para el de amon mga bata, aprende pronto y fácil, usando el de amon lingwahe chabacano.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Ya Allah. Dihil mo kamo in language inclusion. Madawhat in kahanungan, language inclusion, suway di bugtuan.
Masampat abi-abi, manatiling matatag para sa inklusibong edukasyon, IPED, maedop, mabuhay.
اللهم اجعل اجتماعنا هذا اجتماعا مرحوما واجعل من بعده تفرقا معصوما ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد السلام والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Let us remain standing. We recognize that whatever strides we have reached today in our advocacy for language and inclusion have been made possible by those who have walked a less traveled path these past decades. We recognize solemnly that our decisions today, our acts of commitment, will reverberate into the lives of today's youth and succeeding generations. Ang lahat ng ating ipinalangin ay tungo sa pagsulong ng inklusibong edukasyon para sa bansang makabata at mga batang makabansa. At this point, let us remain standing as we witness our Vice President and our esteemed guests in setting their commitments. We celebrate this moment and weave our commitments together. sparks our spirit of unity, and during the break, everyone is invited to write their commitments on our matatag boards at the back and here in front. Regional representatives are to post their commitments in our map, and we are enjoined to also write our commitment cards and also drop it in our earthen vessel. May the blessings be with us during this event as we concretize our intentions in the years to come. Maraming salamat po sa ating lahat. Matagot-tagot ako, amin.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Lori. At this point, we will showcase a video presentation highlighting various initiatives, challenges, and practices in the implementation of language and inclusion programs. So let us direct our attention to this presentation and gain insights from the valuable experiences of our field implementers.
And good day. Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao would like to present its initiatives and best practices in support to the language and inclusion programs. Let us begin with the BARM's 5 Bs, its own version of the DepEd's 3 Bs, or Bawat Bata ay Bumabasa. Getting children into school is only one part of the challenge. There is a need to make necessary reform to pivot from getting children in school towards ensuring that when children are in school, they are actually learning. The BARM's 5 Bs, or Bawat Bata sa Bangsamoro ay Bumabasa at Bumibilang, aims to reach every child and strengthen kindergarten to grade 12 learners in the region to form the necessary foundations in literacy and numeracy, meet the grade level curriculum competency standards that learners need for learning, and the development of skills for everyday life. To meet these objectives of the region, the divisions implemented the following programs: administration of the CRLA, or Comprehensive Rapid Literacy Assessment, in partnership with ABC Plus to ensure the provision of the right amount and kind of intervention to each learner. Training and orientation for teachers and volunteers. Contextualized intervention programs for different groups of learners, either by teachers, peers, parents and guardians, or community volunteers, using varied strategies and materials provided by ABC Plus and teacher-developed materials as may deem necessary. Intensified SHOGA, or School Head Observed Given Assistance, TOGA, Teacher Observed Given Assistance, and SO-GIFT, Supervisor or Superintendent Observed Given Feedback by Teacher. Festival of Talents, Skills, and Strategies with different literary contests in MTB Maguindanon, such as Kapambatang or Spelling, Reading from the Magic Box, Kambayuka or Balagtasan, etc. Deployment of the tablets with video lessons on beginning reading based on the primer lesson in partnership with the ABC Plus.
Pego sabon si pilyo, sanggilani kalagsik, kahilak ng ganisan, makatangka pa ni sakit. Pa 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 pa, sa 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 sa, ka 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 ka, so diri pembalasan.
Assalamualaikum. Ako po si Johaira Ayunan Luminog at ang ating anak ay nag-aaral ngayon sa Amerol Elementary School. Kasalukuyan nasa ikalawang baitang. Nagkaroon sila ng remedial na klase. Yung mga hindi marunong, pinapapasok kahit na walang classes. Bigla siyang natuto, as in, natuto siyang bumasa ng Tagalog, ng English, or sa language din namin na Magindanaon.
Thank you so much and wassalam.
nagsisikap.
Lahat tayo nagsisipag.
Lahat tayo nais tumalino't gumaling.
Lahat tayo gustong makatulong sa pamilya at sa bayan.
Lahat tayo maaasahan.
Lahat tayo gagawa.
Lahat tayo tutulong.
Lahat tayo didiskarte at dilikha para sa ating kinabukasan.
Dahil lahat tayo ay may pangarap, may gustong abutin, may nais marating.
At kahit pa humarap sa libu-libong hamon ng buhay,
Ang tatag ng lahing Pilipino,
mangingibabaw,
susulong.
Tayo ay magiging matatag.
Matatag na kurikulum,
matatag na paaralan, at agarang serbisyo para sa edukasyon.
matatag na programa sa mag-aaral at kabataan.
Matatag na suporta para sa mga guro.
Ang ating pangarap,
maaabot,
mararating,
basta't tulong-tulong.
Magsisipag tayo
Magsisikap tayo.
para sa isang bansang makabata.
Batang makabansa.
Lahat tayo.
Lahat tayo.
Lahat tayo. Matatag ang pangarap, matatag ang kinabukasan.
Let us give a big round of applause to everyone who contributed to the presentation. Let us now move forward to our plenary sessions. Our first plenary talk will focus on fostering multilingualism for inclusion in education and society. I am honored to introduce to you our esteemed speaker for the first session. The first plenary speaker, who is currently the Senate President pro tempore, is a four-term senator who has authored many laws to improve Filipinos' lives and promote inclusive, sustainable, and resilient development. She has served as a member of the House of Representatives of the Philippines, representing the Lone District of the province of Antique, and notably the sole Antiqueña who has served as Deputy Speaker of the House. She was the youngest elected senator in 1998, and notably, she is the only female majority leader who have served in the Philippine Senate. She has authored numerous landmark laws for the conservation and protection of natural resources and has been conferred with numerous awards and distinctions due to her social and environmental advocacies and her efforts to strengthen bilateral relations with other countries. She is a cum laude graduate of the University of the Philippines, top notcher of the National Defense College of the Philippines, and AFP Command and General Staff College, a reserve officer with full colonel rank at the Philippine Air Force, and a recipient of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa from the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our first plenary speaker, a Dangal ng Haraya awardee, Senator Loren Legarda.
umaga po sa DepEd family at sa lahat ng mga stakeholders at partners. At ako po ay nagpapasalamat kay Vice President Sara Duterte sa kanyang napakagandang mensahe at kala ko aalis na. Usually ang keynote speaker umaalis na pagkatapos ng kanilang mensahe ay nanatili siya para pakinggan tayong lahat. Salamat po. Maganda umaga, good morning, maayong aga. Hindi ko nababanggitin ang buong 130 languages, baka yun na ang aking buong mensahe ngayon. Buwabati din sa Chairman ng Education Committee at nagpapasalamat kay Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Baka hindi pa po naibabalita sa Kongresong ito, first time sa Senado, that we have created the Standing Committee on Culture and the Arts. And of course, I had to ask the permission of the Chairman of the Senate Committee on Education. And he more than willingly endorsed that, and so it's the first time that the Senate President pro tempore is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Culture and the Arts, whereas before it was lodged under one committee. And as Senator Sherwin said, sa dami-dami ng hamon ng basic education, much more higher education. That's why they split that. And now there's a committee for culture and the arts. And I believe that languages and social inclusion and inclusivity would fall under both committees. So we're happy to help you in that. Binabati ko rin po, I'd like to greet Attorney Rebecca Eubanks of the USAID and all of those present here today. I feel so much at home being with you because when I was met earlier before 9 and the head of curriculum development and many other stalwarts of DepEd said, "Salamat po sa inyong pagtaguyod ng languages." Sabi ko, ay, salamat. Napapansin dahil ito naman po ay hindi talaga pang headline o pang front page o pang mga million vlogs, hindi ba, ang languages. But to be able to have a summit such as this, it was perhaps 8 years ago when Dr. or Baroness Amos, of the president of the SOAS school in the UK, had said and had suggested that we have a language summit. And it's been 8 years ago that I wanted to have this, and I'm so grateful that DepEd had given such importance to languages and having this summit. Medyo confused lang po ako dahil pagkausapin ko po ang KWF, 130 plus languages. Pagkausapin ko ang DepEd, kanina po binanggit niyo 170. Pero sa booth po ng SIL, tinanong po ni Vice President at saka Sen. Sherwin yata 180 plus. So, siguro kailangan natin alamin ilang ba talaga at ilan yung namamatay at namatay na kailangan buhayin at ilan pa ang mapusok na language. We know that languages are the most powerful instruments for preserving and developing our tangible and intangible heritage. Promoting our mother tongues encourages linguistic diversity, multilingual education, and cultural awareness, and inspires understanding, tolerance, and dialogue. These benefits are shown in study after study across the world. It has been taught as early as biblical times in the story of the Tower of Babel, but it is more effectively proven as a theory by the fact that our languages develop based on our different habitats and our ecosystems. Language and education have always been at the heart of our mission in life and integrated into everything, including the environment and culture. Yes, we cannot protect what we cannot name. Hence, the death of a mother tongue means the ability of that society in interacting with its habitat. It could be hindered. The Philippines has an array of diverse and unique sets of languages from our 17 regions. As I said, there are about 130 native languages according to the KWF, but I'm corrected by DepEd that it's 170, and then further corrected by SIL that it's 183. We are currently standing on the brink of losing some of them. It is no wonder we are also eroding the ecosystems from which they sprung forth. That is why we have initiatives that will revitalize and preserve environments and languages through policies and programs. As your fourth-term senator, tama po yung nagpakilala po sa akin, pinakabata po ako noong 1998. Ngayon po, pinakamahaba ang termino sa Senado. Pero hindi naman po pinakamatanda. May mga mas matanda sa edad, but the longest in terms of tenure. And so, perhaps with his wisdom from 1998, I will try to be of better help to you. We've consistently highlighted linguistic inclusivity to improve communications and foster deeper and more meaningful appreciation among our various cultures. We support multilingualism because people are diverse, both culturally and linguistically. Napakaganda ng inyong dasal kanina, napakaganda ng inyong binasa at mga languages na sinabi ng ating mga kasamahan kanina. And equally important is the access to quality education, which the Vice President has so comprehensively mentioned, and equal opportunities for every student, regardless of ability and background. We should bridge the gap and promote inclusivity in education that cater to special needs, madrasa, indigenous peoples, and alternative learning. We authored Republic Act 11106, the Filipino Sign Language, which I'm so happy DepEd is doing. I think the Senate also does that, I hope, in our online sessions. It mandates the use of the Filipino Sign Language as a medium of instruction for education. Let us focus on addressing individual needs and providing tailored support to enable every student to reach their full potential. We have supported the DepEd mother tongue-based multilingual education, where the first languages to which students are accustomed were used as a medium of instruction. In line with this, I'm pleased to share that we have supported the publication of 10 storybooks in Kinaraya under the Kugungan Kinaraya project of the Sentro ng Wika at Kultura in the University of Antique. This was, of course, accomplished with the Komisyon ng Wikang Filipino and the National Commission on Culture and the Arts. Copies of these storybooks I saw earlier are part of the Region 6 exhibit of our event. Sana magawa pa natin to sa ibang mga rehiyon. And I suggested earlier, I will come back and I like to see each and every booth, but perhaps we could have 130 booths next time, 180 booths next time, or maybe an online platform for every region and all the languages, including the IP languages. That would be so exciting. Studies have shown that the use of the first language as a medium of instruction contributes to students' better performance in school. In 2016, the program covered 19 languages, and I will name them just to emphasize that if you have not heard some of them, but I'm sure you have, it shows we can all learn a bit more about our diverse cultures. Of course, you've heard the Ibanag, the Sinug, Buanong, Binasaya, Hiligaynon, Waray, Bahasa Sug, Magindanawan, Maranao, Chavacano, Ivatan, Sambal, Akyanon, Kinaraya, Yakan, and Sinu-Rigaunon, and the familiar Tagalog, Kapampangan, Pangasinan, Iloco, Bicol. That was in 2016 when we had these programs. In 2018, we proudly supported, in partnership with KWF, the International Conference on Endangered Languages and published the Atlas ng Wika. I hope I have remaining copies. I shared that in my previous term with DepEd, but if not, we have the soft copy through the KWF. Is KWF here? Yes, very good. We will publish more hard copies and perhaps put it online so that each DepEd division, school could have a copy. This is really a significant milestone in the mapping, the validation, and archiving of our languages in the Philippines. Also very proud to share that we also collaborated with KWF in providing the installation of 130 language markers, but I am told only 22 have been installed thus far. I'm still finding out, Madam Vice President, if the language marker in Davao, has it been installed? Not yet. Davao Oriental, but Davao City, not yet. Okay. Of the 130, only 22 because of the 3-year pandemic. The artist who did it is Jun Yi of UP Los Baños, but we will ask him to finish the 130 at least so that all of these can be, we'll find out if Valenzuela City, if a language emanated from Valenzuela. We are not sure of that. So these language markers are tangible representations of our efforts to honor and preserve the roots of our languages all over the country. The first language marker was erected in Antique for Kinaraya. These markers emphasize as well that language is both oral and written. I know that there is one in Batangas City, meron din po sa Kiangan sa Ifugao at sa iba't ibang lugar. We know also that our written form, baybayin, and many other related permutations across the cultures of the land can be revived and used again. In fact, the use of baybayin, I have this writing on my office walls, and all my correspondence, including my calling card, ensured that we have a baybayin in my stationery as well. If you've not yet visited, it's been there for more than 10 years. The Baybayin Gallery in the National Museum of Anthropology is a project we did in my previous term, as well as the Hibla ng Lahing Filipino, which also is beside the Baybayin Gallery. So we are now seeing a glorious revival where this writing, the Baybayin, is more visible. It is also in our passports. It was in our money, and many signages of government agencies and institutions have also adopted it. I'm happy also to report to you that your Senate, your Congress, will soon pass. Perhaps on Monday, the BICAM will be approved with the support of the chairman of the Education Committee, because we already finished the BICAM. This is the Culture Mapping Bill, which I filed from my first term. Now it's my fourth term. After 20 plus years, it will be enacted into law, and this will be life-changing, I think, for the Department of Education. During the pandemic, kwento ko lang maikli lang, na imbis na malugmok sa depression at sa hirap, nag-train ang buong DepEd Antique with the help of UP Visayas and Region 6 DepEd so that our teachers are mentors and learned and became mentors for culture mapping. So perhaps that can be done in many other regions as well, Madam Secretary, Madam Vice President, because the culture mapping would really enhance and build capacity of our teachers in our local communities. This is aimed at strengthening the preservation of our cultural heritage, which includes our traditions, our languages. We aim to increase cultural education programs and identify, record, and document our cultural properties. We have likewise emphasized the importance of accessible disaster-related information in the lives of our people through the Language Accessibility Act, which prioritizes localized messaging for disaster-related communications. I think ito ang nagiging problema pag meron tayong mga warnings, di ba? Early warning system sa pag-asa, pero nasa English or minsan scientificong technical at maski binablas sa text at meron tayong batas dyan, pero because of the diversity in language, it may not be immediately understood. So we provided toolkits, and I hope that this can be translated as well to various languages. We have filed Senate Bill 1116, which I hope can be enacted into law with the support of our chairman of the Committee on Education. The Local Studies Center Act to document and safeguard our vast cultural and historical heritage that includes languages and dialects. This would entail the creation of research institutions in both state universities and colleges and the DepEd system. And I would of course, mention this, but I'm sure no one in this hall today would think this way, where I hope that we all know the difference, of course, between dialects and languages. And up to now, people ask me, ano bang diferensya ng dialect at language? And there's still some confusion. That's why it is a challenge for us to really make everyone understand. I would just like to mention, for example, a long-time law of a protected area in Mindanao, the Mount Kitanglag Range, RA 8978, 20 years ago sa aking unang termino. It's a protected area, but we ensured that conservation efforts are effectively communicated to the local communities. Sa Region 10 ito, we included specific provisions for the production of conservation materials in languages that are easily understood in the area. But this was 20 years ago, so I'm not sure if the information materials for the conservation of Mount Kitanglag Range still exists, and perhaps we could do that in all our 114 protected areas under the e-NIPAS law that are conservation and protection alituntunins are said in the languages in that region. We've also launched, along with the NCCA, Usapang Wika. Perhaps we could share the soft link to Usapang Wika. It's 10 episodes, featured some languages, not yet all. We will have a sequel to this: Ilocano, Cebuano, Hiligaynon, and Kinaraya, Waray, Pangasinan, Kapampangan, Tagalog, Bicolano, and Meranao. These are some of the country's main languages. They highlight the history, the literary works, and evolution of each. Stakeholders such as the academe, local governments can localize, innovate, and come up with programs to promote and preserve their linguistic heritage, such as language tours emanating from the language marker. If there's no language marker, magsimula sa munisipyo, sa barangay hall, then they can develop language tours that will ignite a passion for language learning. Speak your native tongue proudly, even to tourists, and make it part of their experience. If we are all keenly aware of the value of our spoken and written languages and the multiple advantages of multilingualism, we can all take pride in them, prevent the loss of any indigenous language, enhance our capacity to protect our habitats, and give our guests in our country the experience of hearing and reading our diverse cultures. Let us place this in the mainstream, and we will be ready for the challenges and the opportunities of the globalized world we are in. So ito lang po ang mumunting report na binibigay ko po sa inyo ng ating mga inisyatibo na ginawa sa mga nakadaang dekada para po paunlakin ang ating mga languages ng Pilipinas. Hindi po sapat ang aking ginagawa. Gusto ko pang gumawa ng mas marami at nakakatuwa na marami tayo sa bulwagang ito na magtutulungan to promote Philippine languages, to see the connection between and among language, tangible and intangible heritage, and our culture, and the conservation of our protected areas in our environment. With that, I would like to say, Madam Vice President, we are with you, supporting your initiatives for language inclusion and diversity with the Department of Education, the unsung heroes in the farthest areas of our country. Maraming salamat. Duro gid nga salamat, palangga ko kamo.
Thank you very much, Senator Lauren Legarda. Thank you for highlighting the significance of multilingualism towards inclusion. The journey towards inclusive education involves supporting alternative and inclusive learning. Our second plenary speaker will shed light on this. I am honored to introduce to you our esteemed speaker for the second plenary talk. The second plenary speaker is more known by his constituents as WIN and is no neophyte to public service, with his almost 2 decades of experience marked by honesty, integrity, and a relentless drive to serve his countrymen. As former congressman and mayor of Valenzuela City, he has made his life's mission to champion good governance, fight corruption, and improve Valenzuela City's education system. He helped transform Valenzuela City's education system into one of the nation's best. He authored other notable and relevant legislations, including the measure on increasing salaries for teachers and non-teaching personnel, the nationwide school-based feeding program for kinder and elementary public school students, the Nanay Teacher Parenting Program, Anti-Hazing Act, expansion of access to college education for millions of Filipinos, pro-consumer laws, among others. As chairman of the Senate Committee on Basic Education, Arts and Culture, he continues to introduce further reforms to bring the Philippine education system to world-class levels. Indeed, his commitment to genuine public service continues to drive him in pursuing his promising vision of a better Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to speak on supporting alternative and inclusive learning, Senator Sherwin T. Gatchalian.
Hello. Gandang maga po sa lahat. Good morning to all. Mayong aga sa tanan. Naimbag na bigat kada kayo amen. Mayong buntag sa inyong tanan. Marhay na aga sa Indugabos. Assalamualaikum sa ating mga Muslim brothers and sisters. First of all, let me acknowledge and greet our dignitaries for today. Let me acknowledge our beloved and hardworking Vice President, Vice President Sara Duterte. Let me also greet, hindi naman po pinakamatagal sa Senate, no? Pinakamatalino at experienced na senador sa ating Republika, Senator Loren Legarda. Let me also greet Attorney Rebecca Eubanks of USAID. Let me also greet, I understand she's here, Mayor Emmy Calixto. Dito ba si Mayor? Ayun, Mayora, good afternoon. Good morning, sorry. And let me greet the regional directors and superintendents of the different DepEd offices around the country. All right. So I was given a very specific task. Oh, let me also greet Dr. Gina Gonong before I forget. I was given a very specific task of Dr. Gina Gonong to discuss about alternative learning system and inclusive education. And I was very blessed to be given a chance to shepherd two very important laws that will promote inclusion in our country. And I have to thank our good Vice President for making my life easier. She discussed a lot of the good things already earlier, but I will just go skim very quickly some of the concepts of the Alternative Learning Act, which is Republic Act number 11510. And this law's underlying reason is the 28 million Filipinos who did not finish any form of formal high school or formal basic education. And because of that, Congress, both the lower house and the Senate, decided to enact this law to institutionalize the ALS. So the basic concept of the ALS is to institutionalize the program, create a specialized Bureau of Alternative Education, and at the same time build one ALS community learning center in all of our LGUs. These learning centers will be the focal point, the focal office in implementing the ALS program. And not only that, but we also linked it to TechVoc training. We discovered in our hearing that a lot of our ALS graduates, those who are certified, end up not getting a job because of lack of skills. So in the law, we also link the development of skills so that our ALS graduates will be gainfully employed. We also authorized the use of the Special Education Fund to fund the ALS. We also allowed transportation and teaching aid allowance to our ALS teachers and community ALS implementers. So these are just the salient points, and I would like to encourage everyone to read the law and the IRR, and I thank the Department of Education for immediately releasing the IRR so that we can roll out the program as quick as possible. So just basic statistics, and this is what drove us to implement the law. 1/4 of our population, close to about 25% of our population, did not finish any form of basic education. Iba sa kanila, hanggang high school lang, iba sa kanila hanggang elementary lang. And that's almost 28 million people of our population. And I agree with our good Vice President that we're just scrimping the tip of the iceberg. Only 2% of those 28 million are actually going into our ALS system. So malaki pa yung trabaho natin to attract them to come into our ALS system. But at the same time, we have not yet reached our pre-pandemic levels. On the average before, we're hitting about 700,000 students. Now we're just around the 600,000 students. So the pandemic also created a lot of damage in terms of the ALS program and those who are going into the ALS program. Another bill that we pushed in Senate, and I thank Senator Lauren Legarda for also for being a staunch supporter of the inclusive education law. This law is a landmark law. This will put us at par or at the same plane with the international community insofar as inclusive education is concerned. The Philippines is now promoting the principle of inclusive education. So no child will be excluded, no child will be segregated, all children will be part of the learning community. And in order to do that, we also expanded the support that will be given to our learners with disabilities. So just basic concepts, I'll just run you through some of the important salient points. Our good Vice President also mentioned earlier a lot of the updates on the inclusive education law. So the law mandates the creation of at least one inclusive learning resource center in all LGUs. And this inclusive learning resource center will be staffed with experts, therapists, and if that is not possible, the use of a multidisciplinary team will be tapped. So in other words, the intervention program will start at the ILRC. And also embedded in the law, I didn't fail to write it in the points, is the individualized education plan of all learners. So it will not be a one-size-fits-all for our learners with disabilities, but an individualized education plan will be crafted so that each learner will be given the right intervention so that they can participate in the classroom. In the law, we will also institutionalize the child find system so that we'll be proactive in locating learners with disabilities, and to encourage more teachers, more specialists to come into or to promote inclusive education and to come join the Department of Education, is we will also give out scholarship program for pre-service and in-service teachers. And this is to encourage more teachers to take up specialization in special needs education. Right now, it's specialized na yan, no? And what we want is to encourage more pre-service teachers to specialize in inclusive education and also in special needs education. And we also separated the line item for learners with disabilities, or the budget for learners with disability. The good news is, over the years, the budget of inclusive education have gone up, and I thank our good Vice President for pushing this. Before, it was hovering around 200 million pesos a year, but now it has been doubled to about 500 million pesos. So we've seen a double in terms of budget allocated, and courtesy of the Department of Education for pushing this. But again, no, the pandemic has caused a lot of damage in terms of enrollment. And we're still far from the enrollment of pre-pandemic levels. So those are the two bills that I was enabled to shepherd in the Senate to promote inclusive education in our country. And I thank Dr. Gina and all the stakeholders and the Department of Education for guiding us on the concept and especially the technical aspects of the bill. But this event is about language and inclusion. No? And I hope Dr. Gina will not raise some comments, but I will just digress a bit to talk about language and inclusion of language in our system. We live in a very beautiful country. The Philippines is the most beautiful country in the world. And we're beautiful because we're diverse. We're diverse in culture, we're diverse in heritage, we're diverse in language. And that's the beauty of our country. We have a lot of different things that we can learn from, especially me, being a legislator. Even now, whenever I go to the different provinces of our country, I learn so much. And it's one of the most beautiful things of our country. One of the most diverse aspects of our country is language. And if you ask the experts like KWF, officially there's about 130 languages in our country. That's a lot of languages. And earlier we had a chance to interact with the proponents of SIL, the Summer Institute. And earlier, point blank, we asked sir and ma'am about how many languages. There are about 183 languages in our country based on their research. But we painstakingly looked at the PSA. If you look at the questionnaire of the PSA, our country, PSA conducts census, and the last census was 2020. And there's an open-ended question there. Ano ang wika na ginagamit mo sa iyong bahay, sa iyong tahanan? It's an open-ended question, and our constituents writes it. If you count the different languages there are about 245 different languages in our country. Ganong karami po ang lingwahe ho sa ating bansa. And that's, for me, that's a beautiful aspect of our country because it's linguistically diverse. We learn from those languages, and those languages are also grounded in history, culture, and heritage. And that's the beauty of our country. And of course, that diversity also comes with complications. And I heard good Vice President mention about complexities. And that complexities can also translate in the delivery of education in our country. Right now, we use 19 official languages. Tama po ba? Yan po yung ginagamit natin lahat. So if you look at the graph, 19 versus 245 is a big disparity. But in one hearing, I asked the KWF, how come there's a big disparity? Apparently, the 19 covers 90% of our population in our country. And that was the theory behind it. And we asked them, KWF, what is the basis for that? And apparently, there was no direct answer given to us. So we painstakingly, again, looked at the different languages in PSA. And apparently, that 90%, the basis of that 90%, and I'll tell you now, is the questionnaire in the PSA. In the PSA, the top 19 languages that covers 95% of our population are all in the screen right now. Yan yung different languages. But if you look at some of the top languages, for example, Boholano, it's not in the 19. Maranao, it's not in the 19. Masbate or Masbateño is not in the 19. And Kankanae is not also in the 19. So in other words, the selection of the 19 is still a lot of, there's still a lot of question on how those 19 languages were selected, because if you look at the top 19 languages of our country, 4 are missing in the top languages. I say this because as a chairman of your basic education committee, I have to ask questions. It's part of my job to ask questions, whether the easy questions, the hard questions, the questions you don't like to be asked, the questions you like to be asked. But it's my job to ask questions and to analyze the answers. And I say this because there's a raging debate now on the mother tongue being used as the medium of instruction. And I tell you this because I want you also to think about this issue. No? It's not only enough that us in the Senate, both me and Senator Lauren, to think about this issue, but lahat tayo dapat pag-isipan natin to. No? Lahat tayo pag-aralan natin to. No? That's why all of these things came out, because we looked at the different researches and we looked at the different data points that we can access in order to help us make informed and the right recommendations. No? So because of this, we looked at the most recent research. And one of the most recent research that came out, probably the most recent, no, is the one by PIDS. And this is a very intriguing to many and a very interesting research that they came out with. But I encourage everyone to read the PIDS research. This is the most recent, trust me, because I've looked at everything. And in the PIDS research, they came out, no, that while all schools are implementing the program, the quality of implementation may be wanting, as less than 10% of schools surveyed have complied with the 4 minima needed to implement the program effectively. As we all know, the 4 minima needs to be complied in order to implement MTB as MOI, but unfortunately only 10% has complied. Another observation that they found out, the program had to deal with linguistic diversity in the classroom, with challenges, the primary model of implementation that assumes that a child is exposed to only one MT rather than possibly several. And this has been a question that I always ask experts and also advocates, that do we have any survey? No? Nagtanong ba tayo na ang bata ba ay isa lang ang kanyang L1 o dalawa ang kanyang L1? No? Yung parati kong tinatanong how do we know na isa lang ang L1? Kasi we already assume na isa lang in L1. No? But in my going around the country, no, part of our campaign is to go around, I told Dr. Gina that wala pa akong nakakausap na bata na hindi marunong magtagalog. Karamihan din exposed na sa Tagalog. But then again, that's my own observation. It's most important is let's study it. Let's come up with surveys to determine whether children have only one L1 or they have multiple L1s. Another observation, the decision to use a smaller set of languages served the feasibility of implementation objective, but inadvertently created the problem of children being taught and teachers being asked to teach not in their MT, but in a regional language that perhaps is similar but not identical to their language at home. So we demonstrated earlier that there are 9 languages being used in our schools, but there are as many as 240 plus languages. No? And in fact, if you look at the PSA data, sinulat lang ng mga tao doon, Bicol. No? But I understand from the Bicolanos that there are so many different variations of Bicol. No? Tumawid ka lang ng isang municipality, iba na yung Bicol na salita nila at hindi nagkakaintindihan. So my point there is we still need to do more granular analysis. No? Because in the minds of our constituents, Binisaya is a Binisaya, but there's so many variations of Binisaya. A Bicol is Bicol, but there's so many variations of Bicolano. So my point there being is, let's do more granular analysis, no? So that we don't apply a one-size-fits-all to the medium of instruction. And lastly, another observation, the realities in the field is that children are exposed to different languages in the home and in the community. In many cases, L1 is not just one language, but of several. Reasons for reasons of feasibility of implementation, schools visited adopted the model assuming only one L1. No? That's another observation, and that's we need to study very carefully. And I've raised this to some researchers that let's study carefully our learners. What is their L1? Do they have multiple L1s? Do they have one L1s? We need to conduct more research and empirical evidence to determine what is the appropriate medium in instruction to be used in different areas of our country. But we were not happy. No? So we went around the country, umikot po tayo sa buong Pilipinas, and some of you have encountered and talked to, and we have our own observation. These are just a sort of a focus group discussion that we did in different parts of our country, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And our observation from the ground, the mother tongue chosen as a medium of instruction is not the language actually spoken by the learners in our areas. Let's admit it, in urban areas, it's a multilingual scenario. We went to some areas, let's say in Pangasinan, where the urban area is very diverse. In one classroom, you'll have 4 different languages being spoken by our learners. No? And that's also part of the mobility that we are seeing in our country. No? And not only our learners, but also our teachers. No? Our teachers are also mobile. So we had a scenario where in one classroom, they had 4 different languages, and even the teacher came from a different area. No? So that leads to complication. Another observation we did, in multilingual school setting, the MTB MLE policy may be discriminatory against learners who does not speak the regional language chosen as the mother tongue medium of instruction. And if you talk about inclusion, no? We talk about starting where the children are in terms of language. But we all know that in reality, no, the setting is very different. And because the setting is very different, no? We have a multilingual classroom. We are actually excluding some of our learners because of that MOI policy. And we have to think about this very carefully. And we also have to talk to our teachers and learn from their experiences, because our teachers are our frontliners. In fact, I believe, my personal belief is, the battleground is not in the Senate. No? The battleground is not in DepEd Central Office. The battleground is in each and every classroom in our country. And the teacher are our frontliners. No? They're our soldiers implementing this program. So we need to listen to them. And this is the feedback that we are getting. Some teachers are not fluent in the mother tongue. They are asked to use as medium of instruction. We also heard from some of our observation, teachers reported difficulties for grade 4 learners when they start learning math and science using English as a medium of instruction after 4 years of learning these subjects in their mother tongue. We all know there's a transition, no? From grade 3 to grade 4. No? And from what I heard from our teachers, especially for math and science, it's very difficult, because what the teachers are telling us, for 3 years, no? For the key stage 1, the learners are not exposed in English in terms of math. No? All of a sudden, when they go to grade 4, no, it's a shocker to them. No? And a lot of the time of the teachers is spent towards bridging, no? spent towards trying to translate the concepts into English. And because of that time, it's also eating up in the teaching of the math and science subjects. And lastly, we observe limited levels of class participation in the linguistically diverse grade 1 class at Marahan West. No? Meaning, we also observe that in a very diverse setting, there'll be some students will be participating, no? Sagot sila ng sagot, but there'll be some students who will be not participating because they don't understand the language. And that's also a matter that we need to think about, no? Because if we want to promote inclusion, then we also need to address those students that are not from their area and coming from another province or another region. No? So, in short, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to share with you some of our observations. No? I fully support the promotion of our diverse language. You have my 100% support in promoting the different languages the different diversity aspects of our country. But there are things that we need to think about, no? Because at the end of the day, all of us are here for our learners. We are on the same boat. No? We want our learners to succeed in life. We want our learners to come up with good learning outcomes. And these are the things that we need to think about. No? These are the things that we need to analyze. No? These are the things that we need to research heavily on. No? It's not enough. No? Hindi po mahalaga yung nakikita lang natin, naririnig lang natin, but we really need to push the pencil in order to come up with concrete empirical evidence in order to make the right decisions. I have recommendations, but I won't discuss that right now. But my only way forward, there are two things. No? Number one, listen to our teachers. Pakinggan natin yung mga teachers natin. Listen to our supervisors, superintendents, and principals. No? Pakinggan natin sila. No? There are soldiers on the ground. We need to listen to them. Number two, we have implemented the MTB since 2013. No? It's about time that we come up with an assessment on how the MTB MLE is, whether MTB MLE is effective or not, and whether the implementation, the effects, and most especially how it affects the learner outcomes should be studied very carefully. We have to come up with an assessment of the MTB MLE implementation and effectiveness. No? I think 10 years is already enough in terms of gathering information and data. So it's about time to look at this and assess and come up with honest to goodness recommendations on how to move forward with this policy. So again, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Thank you for inviting me. I hope I provoked some thought and some thinking. But again, I thank the good Vice President and Dr. Gina for hosting this event. So at least we have a venue to talk about good things, the controversial things, and provoke thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Win Gatchalian. Thank you for the inspiration and thank you so much for supporting our hashtag All in the Hot Saals. And thank you for championing education at all times. At this point, we will pause for a short break and we will resume after 10 minutes. Thank you. let's all be settled. We will resume in a few minutes. Thank you. Welcome back to Language and Inclusion Summit. We are still live to via DepEd Philippines Facebook page. At this point, to give us the key outcomes and recommendations from the pre-summit on language and inclusion, please help me welcome the Assistant Secretary for Curriculum and Teaching, Dr. Alma Ruby C. Torrio.
Thank you very much, Director Lin, for that very kind introduction. Let me also greet our Vice President and Secretary, Ma'am Sara Duterte, and of course, Senator Win and Senator Loren, the members of the EXICOM who are here, Ma'am Gina, Asek Omar, and Kong Joy, Attorney Rebecca Eubanks, and all our development and education partners, our resource speakers, our RDs and bureau directors, colleagues from the central office and from regional offices and schools division offices and schools, masantos ya kabosan at sikatayon amin, na imbag nga bikat kadatayo amin. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. I'm very pleased to present the outputs of the pre-summit held last May 19 to 20 at Marco Polo Hotel. Actually, parang hindi na yata kailangan. Kasi po, kanina, narinig na po natin yung mga challenges kay Senator Win. Nabanggit na rin ni Senator Loren yung mga initiatives natin. At si VP Ma'am Sara, nasabi na rin po niya yung ways forward. at yung commitment ng hinihingi ng DepEd. At any rate, please allow me to present the inputs during that pre-summit. But before anything else, I would like again to take this opportunity to thank the working committees behind the scenes who took time and put a lot of effort for the success of that pre-summit. And of course, our attendees during that pre-summit, they came from different backgrounds, they came from different orientations, but one thing is common, their interest in language and inclusion. And that pre-summit was an avenue for all the participants to discuss the current state of the implementation of language education as a component of the Department of Education's programs such as the mother tongue-based multilingual education, indigenous peoples education, madrasa education program, special needs education, and the alternative learning system. Indeed, in our pre-summit sessions, we were all benefited from each of the resource persons' perspectives on the regional and global perspective on language and inclusion. The various points raised by our magnificent resource persons gave us better insights on the role of language in a truly inclusive education. It was uplifting to see the fruits of the conversations during that pre-summit. And I personally witnessed the desire of all the participants to provide valuable inputs in the respective rooms during our breakout sessions. So in the we had breakout sessions, and during that breakout sessions, we had identified 6 priority areas, which include social preparation and advocacy, resources, current language, education policies, evidence-based assessment and research, curriculum and teaching, and stakeholders engagement. So this is the synthesis of all the inputs shared during the breakout sessions. On the issues and challenges, there was a mention of varied interpretations of language and inclusion policies. And going over all the issues and challenges gathered in the different breakout sessions, they all boiled down to varied interpretations of language and inclusion policies. Common reasons include the policies themselves, which contain very specific provisions, leaving DepEd field implementers with limited room for policy contextualization and lack of policy orientation conducted, yielding to lack of awareness and common understanding on how policies should be implemented. Another issue mentioned was the insufficient teacher preparation. There was a mention of disconnect between pre-service preparation and in-service teaching demands. That language and inclusion programs require specialized trainings which are not part of pre-service education courses. Off-campus teaching or off-campus practice teachers are sent to schools with mainstream classes, and issuance of enacted special laws on inclusion programs demand higher qualification standards for teachers and more responsive learning environment. Another challenge is the limited quality-assured teaching learning resources, and this was mentioned by Senator Win earlier, the difficulty in complying the 4 minima requirements of the MTB-MLE. The 4 minima refers to the orthography, grammar, spelling, and literature. The lack of developmentally appropriate materials, the non-inclusive learning environment, that is, the absence of appropriate classrooms to accommodate the diverse needs of learners. But as you may know, this was reported by our secretary earlier, the establishment of our ILRCs to address this concern. Another issue is the lack of sustainability support. There was a mention, under this challenge, there was a mention of limited support funds from internal and external stakeholders. Support from stakeholders mainly on activity or project basis only. And some participants even mentioned the lack of parental involvement. Some participants mentioned the weak mechanism for monitoring and evaluation. So under this challenge, there was a mention of inadequate data or evidence on program implementation, the lack of available data on developed teaching and learning resources, lack of appropriate M&E tools, and the unutilized data from M&E. Another challenge is the low learners' interest and motivational level. There was a mention of chronic absenteeism and increased dropout rate among learners, the learners' difficulty to keep up with the medium of instruction used in the classroom, lack of parental support was also mentioned. The last concern that was mentioned is on inadequate pedagogical competence of teachers. So under this challenge, there was a mention of unfamiliarity with the different pedagogical approaches and strategies, the lack of technical assistance from instructional leaders, the lack of capacity building for teachers, the lack of experts on language and inclusion programs to train and guide teachers, in-service trainings. Some in-service trainings are not aligned with teachers' professional development needs. There was also a mention of making our teachers spend too much time for administrative tasks. Our pre-summit participants also presented action points and recommendations. And some of the action points mentioned include the alignment of pre-service preparations with in-service teaching demands. That is to ensure that pre-service education courses are aligned with the teaching demands of the current language and inclusion programs, that off-campus practice teachers should be sent to schools implementing inclusion programs. The participants offered or mentioned the need to intensify the program of quality-assured teaching and learning resources. I'm looking at Director Aris and Director Eds. So the need to develop more quality-assured teaching and learning resources and ensure that these reach schools and the classrooms. The need to conduct periodic fora, dialogue with field implementers and stakeholders. This is to sustain partnership, to continuously update them with program implementation and provide the support needed. Likewise, it entails strengthening of mechanisms for information and advocacy campaigns, kamustahan, program caravans, and use of promotional print and digital materials. On the issue of M&E, the participants during that pre-summit mentioned the need to strengthen the M&E system. This requires the provision of appropriate M&E tools and utilization of data for the program, for the improvement of program implementation. Ito, maganda to. The participants during that summit mentioned the need to make every school a happy place for learning. This is to sustain interest and motivation of learners to stay in school by strengthening teachers' work engagement, by giving incentives and instilling passion and commitment towards the teaching profession, establishing more appropriate and inclusive classrooms to accommodate the diverse needs of learners, and allowing learners to experience success in schools and have meaningful and authentic learning experience. To strengthen professional development is another action point mentioned during that pre-summit. And so this entails more trainings and scholarships for teachers and ensuring that these are anchored on teachers' professional development needs. The action points mentioned during the summit were aligned to our DepEd Matatag Education Agenda. So next slide, please. Okay, so lahat naman tayo, alam na natin yung we all know by heart the 4 principles or 4 pillars of the DepEd's Matatag Education Agenda. Okay, so I don't have to mention, I had already mentioned the action points submitted during that pre-summit, and as you can see, dito po, the action points, we aligned the action points, making use of the 4 principles or 4 pillars under Matatag Education Agenda. So again, on behalf of, I would like to take this opportunity again to say on behalf of Yusek Gina and the entire city family, nandyan po sila. Thank you very much for your attendance to this summit. Those who were not involved or were not invited, those who were not called during the pre-summit, somehow you now have a good grasp of what happened during the pre-summit, and this is part 2 of our Language and Inclusion Summit, and we do hope that you also had a good grasp of the action items, and piling-pili po yung grupo na nandito, because you will be our partners, as always, in solving or in addressing the concerns that were manifested during the summit. So on that note, let me say that we need to work together to keep improving. This was mentioned by our VP Sara, to keep improving on the inclusivity of our educational system in the service of our learners. So with that I say, balbalagya salamat, agyamanak apo. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, ASEC Torio, for your comprehensive discussion of the pre-summit outputs. At this point, we would like to express our deepest gratitude and appreciation to DepEd National Capital Region through RD Willie Cabral and Division of Parañaque for the assistance extended for the stage preparation for this event. And of course, we would like to reiterate, thank you very much USAID ABC Plus for being our main partner for this Language and Inclusion Summit. Time check, it's past 12 noon, so the buffet table is ready. So we cordially invite everyone to proceed to the buffet area. We will resume at exactly 1 o'clock. Thank you and enjoy your lunch.